to invite Christian Baesler from Bauer, President of Bauer Media, David Hahn, Senior Vice President, Product Management with Integral Ad Science, and Dana Caputo, Programmatic Ad Operations Director with 10, the Enthusiast Network. So for premium publishers, audience quality, it's always been a core attribute of the brand, but now we're in an age when monetization scale requires things like audience extensions that we've heard about this morning, delivery across multiple exchanges, et cetera. You have to prove the quality of your audience and price it effectively and ultimately manage that yield. So this is a discussion to understand where does that yield optimization function fit in the technology stack? How do you achieve optimal value for your premium inventory across display, mobile, video, even social? So we've got a great group assembled here of practitioners who are living and breathing this every day. First of all, I just want to go down the line, and Christian, start with you. Tell us what you do, and how do you think about inventory optimization, yield management?
Sure. So my name is Christian Baesler. I'm the president of Bauer Xcel Media, which is the global digital division of Bauer Media Group, which is actually one of the biggest magazine publishers, originally coming from print worldwide. We have around 1,000 products worldwide, active in 17 countries, and I'm responsible for the US digital part of that division. And originally we started out in 2012 when there was no digital property whatsoever. It was all quite small. And at the time, we didn't have a strong sales team in the digital space, but also a lot of scale to go in a digital direct sales channel. So we started out relying solely on partners that are ad networks or SSPs or partners like Cargo that have been great at monetizing our inventory. And as we scaled up, we then added in the direct sales channel as well. But throughout the whole process, pretty much all of the revenue we have been generating and continue to generate has been through ad networks and channels that are of similar nature, and then applying yield optimization to increase the price, to increase the value we're getting out of those.
Great. David, why don't you talk about your role at Integral and how you see the space?
Sure. My name's David Hahn. I'm part of the founding team and SVP of Product Management for Integral. Essentially, Integral Ad Science is a media evaluation platform, and our core focus is on this notion that within digital buying and sort of digital media trading in general, you essentially have three factors that you can control. You can control who you're targeting from an advertising perspective. You control the message that you send to that person. But what we feel is a largely commoditized and undervalued area is the media that that person is engaged with at the time that they're seeing the ad. So Integral exists primarily to help buyers and sellers understand and more effectively transact about the value of the media that ads are being shown against.
Okay. Dana, former New Yorker, now LA resident. What do you do now day to day in ad ops and for Programmatic at 10?
Yeah, so Director of Programmatic Ad Operations, basically what that means is running everything from the business side, coordinating with sales, educating them about Programmatic, how to incorporate it in their current sales opportunities, albeit direct or programmatic, and really just onboarding ad technology partners, yield optimizing, deciding where we can make the most revenue for our company. A little bit different than what Christian said he was doing, using mostly ad networks and ad exchanges to optimize traditionally our business at 10, and a lot of people don't know 10, but we own and operate brands like Motor Trend, Automobile, Hot Rod, Surfer, Snowboarder, so really big active lifestyle brands. Traditionally a ton of direct business and really coming up into the programmatic space more and more.
So it's interesting you talking about the overview you need to have of inventory. Are you finding that your team is becoming more hunter than the gatherer that ad ops used to be?
Yeah, I definitely think that's the case. I think every premium publisher has to become a hunter in the space. You have to explain the value prop of your inventory, why they should be landing on it, and I think there is a little bit of a gap between buyer and seller on the transparency of KPIs they're using.
Right. So we've talked a lot this morning about viewability. I'm going to pass it down to you guys. How have the viewability standards changed the way you think about the currency and the value of the inventory? Christian and then David.
Sure. So I think in general, it's a great concept that would be a great proof of a value of a brand. I think speaking about it practically, it's very difficult to execute towards it, both in terms of technology standards, but also in terms of proving that this is now the currency to reflect the value of a brand. And also, we talked about it earlier, there's the perception that the brand value should go up, also the CPM should go up. But what we have actually seen in the marketplace is that it's becoming more and more an expectation that there's viewability to a certain degree, and if not, it deflates the price. So it's not that we now make double the CPMs if something is more or less viewable, it's just becoming a new standard, and if it's not, it goes down. So obviously for us, it's very important as we think about product and about designing the products we're building to build in a way that we can affect the viewability in a positive way. It's more a necessity now than it is an added premium, added value for the customer.
Okay. David, you think about viewability as well as other issues in terms of, defining quality. How does this all work?
So I think there's a couple of points, and we heard this earlier from George, is that for us, viewability, or at least what the definition of a viewable impression is today, is really a starting point, and quite frankly, we feel it's the lowest common denominator. The industry needed to agree on something, and the fact that ads were not being seen, I think, lends itself to two major issues that we think will evolve and certainly come to fruition, certainly in digital over the next 12, 18 months. The first is how we measure performance. We have a fundamental problem with the way we measure performance digitally in digital advertising today. Most attribution models are focused on some event in time that occurred between a user seeing an ad, or supposedly seeing an ad, and then a user taking action on that ad. And quite frankly, digital has largely been built as a direct response medium, which, to Jonah's point earlier on, is not really accounting for about 90% of the dollars spent on advertising. So we need to change the way we think about attribution. We need to think about what metrics matter to brands and brand advertisers, and we need to change how we value success. If we change the way we think about that, and that's more on the buy side than it is on the sell side, then the value of media, we believe, comes into play. Now, the challenges that publishers have, and most of the people in this room, is how do you differentiate the quality of your media against everybody else who is largely commoditize it because of the cookie targeting or the audience targeting. Mm-hmm. And so, where we feel there is opportunity is really to create a currency by which buyers and sellers transact around not only the value of audience, but the value of media. If those two things combined become tangible or at least quantifiable and can indicate a success metric that everybody agrees is the right one, the value of your media will increase.
So do you see a reset coming in terms of supply and demand?
I think that it's no secret, and we've talked about it a lot today, that buying and selling of media, whether that be digital, whether that be print, whether that be TV, is becoming increasingly more automated and increasingly more driven by machines. So if a machine is looking for certain signals in a buy, how are those signals presented to that machine in order for them to quantify the value of that buy? Now, that doesn't mean that sales teams are going to be eliminated and we're going to go into sort of a high-frequency trading world like the stock market. What it means is that sales teams are going to have to figure out a new way to explain their value. But then at the execution layer, these programmatic platforms are largely taking over how the trading or the media execution layer works. So once the buy is made and once the agreement on how much to pay for it is there, the actual transaction occurs between two machines talking to each other. And if those machines can't understand the appropriate signals, then they're going to devalue whatever media is being bought.
So David, your technology helps publishers pay attention to those signals. What do you see as the key criteria that publishers like Dana should be thinking about as they're enabling the sales team to make the pitch that brand and quality audience go together?
Well, we've talked a lot about viewability, so certainly making sure the ad at least has an opportunity of being seen is one of them. But how long is an ad in view for before it is considered successful or considered resonating with a user? How many ads are in share of view? So if I've got 3 ads at the top of the page and they're all defined as in view, is that as valuable to an advertiser as just a single ad? How do you design your site? What's the layout of your site? What is the attention that your site garners? How do you marry context, audience, and message together? All of these things are things that I think publishers need to pay close attention to. The other side of it is how do you meet service levels? One of the biggest challenges that we hear from publishers is I have to have an 80% viewability SLA, otherwise pick agency X, insert name here, won't buy from me anymore. How do I actually meet that SLA? So some of the products that we build and some of the products that we're focused on are, firstly, eliminate the discrepancies for viewability between buyers and sellers. That 10% number, I think, is high, and there are ways in which you can eliminate them. And secondly, how do we help publishers determine which ads need to be placed in which places to meet certain viewability SLAs or quality SLAs or things like that. And then as they move beyond just their owned and operated media, how do they do audience extension without exposing their brand to risk, exposing their brand to fraud and things like that.
Right. Danny, you've been in a couple of different shops, Conde before this. You've been in environments where the sales team is talking about the importance of brand. What are the kind of tools or capabilities that you'd like to see a company like Integral or any of the other, real-time inventory analysis companies bring to market to make your job easier?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, again, viewability is huge, and I think it's what everyone's talking about in the market. And when you're talking about quality of inventory, the way that we value, quality of our inventory is different based on every client. It could be that the client wants, a rising star unit. It could be that they're interested, solely in market users. And, I think that if other, vendor partners are able to help verify and identify that, we're providing these users what they're looking for, I think that's absolutely something that we'd be interested in.
Mm-hmm. Taking notes.
Someone in the audience is from our team taking notes.
Christian, your sales team, I've talked to other folks in your company. How has your sales team kind of evolved with the growth of programmatic? And are you moving towards private deals more and more? What's the dynamic of the sales process going like?
Yeah, so we still sell a lot of integrated packages together with the print magazines that we have. Mm-hmm. It's mostly still about how can we create custom solutions, not just sell a specific banner on the homepage, where it's a lot of packaging in events, in the print magazine, in editorial and print, but also on the websites that are being executed. And in terms of programmatic on the direct sales side, we have been doing private marketplaces with agencies, with set rates and set guarantees that have been executed. But it's not that it's the biggest part of the business. The biggest part of the business for us is still on the direct sales side, those custom executions across multiple media, or the direct relationship with networks and third-party partners that for us sell the media on a IAB standard unit or even on high-impact units.
Okay. More and more publishers that I talk to are looking at or even testing first look or tagless integrations, so they can manage more holistically their yield or their programmatic demand. There's a few different companies, a couple of them are in the house, I think. How do you guys think about this holistic form of yield management and in the way that it weighs private open deals and ideally gets a first look at the entire marketplace before an ad is served?
I'll go ahead and jump in on that. So I think with a tagless solution, and that's another hot topic in the market for the past year, but I think as long as you're valuing your inventory properly, and I think if they're willing to pay the CPMs for the type of inventory you're providing, I don't see an issue with that, circumventing a PMP deal or your open auction, because it's all about the value that you're placing. Is it, only your above the fold placements? Is it your high impact units that you're offering in this tagless solution? And basically, why Tagless was developed, from what I've been understanding in market, is just that it's trying to allow a chance for other advertisers to come in and be valued properly outside of the Google system. As a publisher, everyone, I would say, is probably a very large partner with Google, but it's good to be able to have that diversity and see how you can optimize your yield from other partners.
And I understand that it's even more important internationally, where DFP might not necessarily be the dominant ad server. Christian, what's your thoughts on first look?
I think it's a great trend because it finally moves away from that situation where you send impressions to a partner at a certain CPM and it goes unfilled, because now the decision is already made before even calling a partner. And so you kind of move away from that waterfall approach of pass-back tags and losing the value or the optimization or the retargeting along that way. And it's actually a good concept from a publisher perspective. We have been integrating a few partners as well on that end, and The only issue that we see there, on the one hand, for each partner you have to do a technical integration. Some are more complex than others. Eventually it adds load to the page that could make it slower as the more partners you add. But the biggest issue we saw is that it's still missing scale. We do see the high CPMs that are much larger than we get from any ad network or any other kind of deal. But the amount that's coming in, even though we do have the volume on the advertising side, is not representing an equal share. So it's great on the CPM level, but in terms of absolute revenue coming through these kind of partners or through these kind of channels, it still needs to catch up.
Okay. I'm just curious, on the panel and even out in the audience, we had a lot of discussion about viewability. 70% is the kind of agreed, at least through the IAB, agreed percent to offer for a guarantee, and then start thinking about make good. Are you seeing an increase in CPMs as viewability is beginning to be adopted, or is the hope? It was always the hope of publishers that, okay, the value of our audience is going to finally be recognized, and for magazine media especially, you guys have it's actually a great story. You have a subscriber often as a primary key. You've got real humans looking at this inventory. How's the impact on CPMs been, as viewability is coming into play?
When it comes to programmatic, at least for 10 specifically, viewability, purchase within the programmatic channel hasn't been as much of an issue. I think it's become very prevalent on the direct side of the house. Mm-hmm. I think that tools, like Integral is providing, and ComScore, has with their industry trust profiles. I think those are all tools that buyers are interested in, and I think it's something they certainly should be looking at. But it doesn't always, necessarily translate into that higher value, which we need to be charging a premium for. That's not all of your inventory is going to be 100% viewable. As Keith was saying, that would be great. It's not certainly a reality, but I think it's something to be mindful of, as this becomes more and more popular in programmatic.
Mm-hmm. Christian, you agree?
I think there are two aspects to it. One is, again, the ad network side or the programmatic side that's not direct sold. And there are a lot of companies like Google AdX that said they mostly transact only on viewable impressions, and if not, then their CPM will go down, or even they won't fill anything at all. So there is true value in optimizing for more viewable impressions with the ad network side of the business. On the direct sales side, it seems like it's more and more becoming a necessity that we do have it, not necessarily that we can charge a premium for it, but it's expected. So obviously, if you said 70%, if there is a case where someone wants 100%, that's worth adding a premium to make up for the difference of the 30% that we have to run in addition. But the biggest difference is that everyone is just expecting it for the same price that we originally had. And if not now, then this is where the path will be going. Everyone will be expecting viewability.
I think that will change, to be honest with you. I think what we're going to see over time is different standards emerging for viewability. And so right now, everybody's focused around the 1 second, 50% of the creative in view. And as I said earlier, I think that's the starting point. We're already starting to see, certainly from our buy-side clients, agencies redefining those standards in terms of what their expectations are. So it's no secret that Group M has their own standard. Digitas are experimenting new standards. I think where it becomes challenging for publishers, and I think where we actually land up, is that every single campaign will have different viewability standards. And that is going to make a publisher's life very, very difficult to deal with. One, from a forecasting perspective. Two, from just an inventory management perspective. How do you scale this campaign? How do you deliver? How do you pace? And three, what tools do you put in your kind of ad tech arsenal to manage it? And that is what I mean by automation, is that if you, as a publisher, are still trying to manage campaigns manually, the kind of old-fashioned way of doing ad ops, I don't think that you will survive long-term and be able to reap real benefits in this industry as viewability, as these media standards change. We're seeing publishers struggle with big brands who are saying, look, if you can't do 80% of the creative for 3 seconds in view and meet an SLA, we'll buy from someone else who can. And the reason for that is that you haven't yet figured out how to really quantify the value of your media, because the advertisers are saying, well, I can find this audience anywhere. Everybody's got a Facebook cookie. Everybody's got a Google cookie. Everybody's got cookies all over the world. So if I'm looking for in-market for X, and I want to find them in, let's just say, high, sports enthusiast activity networks, I can find them on blogs, I can find them on Facebook pages, I can find them all over the web. And that the value of that media from the buy side is largely commoditized. Now that doesn't help anybody in this room, but if you can prove the value of your media and the value of your audience together, drive a better result, I believe that you will get premium back in your sales. And then all you have to do is adopt technology that allows you to meet the expectations of the buyers.
I think that's interesting that you say adopting technology that, exposes what, those buyers are looking for. And that's something that Chip alluded to earlier, and I have a similar sentiment, really, because in programmatic, on the publisher side, we really have access to, impressions served, clicks, revenue, CPMs, basically just how you structure the deal. We don't have insights from the buyers of how it's performing on a higher engagement level. If we have access to that information and you work with your buyer to get that, then we can really optimize and make it perform well for you. And I think that that's certainly the type of product that will move the needle for both publishers and buyers to get them what they're looking for.
Right. I've heard a lot of brand advertisers say they're willing to move down the road of shifting the focus from a click to brand engagement metrics, but it's going to take upping the game for attribution, both on the publisher side as well as the ad server side. So we got a lot of work to do, I think, in that front. You mentioned just a minute ago that as these standards are evolving, mobile is not here yet, right? But I'm curious how you guys are setting up your inventory today differently for a display environment versus a video environment, for instance, where you've got, there is a viewability standard, but how are you optimizing or managing your yield differently on these different screens? Any thoughts on that? Are you shifting, for instance, you've got different avails, clearly, in video. Certainly that's we're hearing that from a lot of publishers. Would love to have more video, great CPMs. So that typically sells out, right?
I think it's a constraint of inventory, similar to how, we're talking about 70+% in viewability. There is going to be some constraints on supply. It's the same thing with video.
Right.
So, to answer your question, yeah, that is managed differently. Typically is sold out. I think that, there isn't a standard, especially with mobile specifically, on, performance for mobile. What should we be expecting to perform, right, in what manner? So I think mobile is still a little bit tricky to decide on how to package and include that.
Yeah. Christian, you've got some really strong mobile brands.
Yeah, strong in the sense of we do have a lot of mobile traffic. So about 80% of all the users coming to our site are coming from a mobile device. And that's around 25 million uniques a month in total. So 80% of those are coming through a mobile device. And on the monetization side, we actually work with cargo, with the waterfall approach that Ryan just described in terms of we have the ability to direct sell cargo's products, and then it goes down to what cargo is selling and optimization they're doing. And they have been doing a great job at building ad products that deliver viewability, that are always working towards the perception or the goal of the brand that wants to work with us. And so I think on the mobile side, where most of our users are, we actually well prepared to deliver to all the needs that any client might have.
Yeah. Anything to add?
I just think that it's actually a huge value add for publishers with a high degree of mobile and video content. I think the brand metrics that brands are going to start looking at are much more available in mobile and video than they are in desktop. Sound and user initiation and things like that. It has a much different experience, and I think that quantifying all of that is important to publishers.
So we'll finally have a cross-device session ID.
Well, everybody's trying to battle that out, right? Depends on who you think's gonna win that battle.
One final question before we take it to the audience. I think about a brand like J14, huge in social media, and people don't realize how much engagement is happening, especially among a younger set, driven by mobile, driven to mobile through social. Those kind of behavioral dynamics are going to start to play into the question of what's that reader relationship look like? Are you starting to gear your platforms towards understanding the social signals as an indicator of quality and yield?
Actually, 2 points. It's good that you brought up J14 because it's our biggest teen brand here in the US, and we've done a lot of it on the digital side. And we brought it from a small user base that it had a few years ago to now becoming the biggest teen brand in the digital space. We have 5.2 million Facebook fans, which is more than 17 or Teen Vogue. And we actually have more people engaged with the brand on Facebook than we have likes. So it just shows the engagement of teens on Facebook, which the common perception in the market has been that they're not active on Facebook. They might not be active to communicate, but they are to consume the news. And we've found very effective ways to transfer those Facebook users, those likes, as traffic to our website. And earlier the point was that the common denominator or the currency is around viewability to make it more comparable. I think what leaves it out of the picture is still the affiliation or the relevance of the brand environment they're in. If I have my personal blog and I put an ad above the fold with nothing on it, I have 100% viewability, but someone might not buy the product because of the environment they saw it in. While in our case, they deeply engage with the content, they interact with the content, and seeing an ad on that environment, it creates much more value that is impossible to measure. It just comes back to the original principle of brand advertising in branded environments. So I think it's having a healthy mix between the brand, between viewability, between any other performance metrics that the advertiser is looking for, and creating the custom executions around it that fit into the brand that you have true metrics to provide to.
Great. You guys have anything to add to the coming social maelstrom? Well, I want to open it up to the audience. Any questions on how yield and revenue is optimized in the mobile, social, desktop, and print environment? Is Matt Prohaska, did he make it here? All right. Well,
We're a much better moderator. Don't
Yeah. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank our panel, Matt, Christian, Dana, David, for joining us today.